Hello, how's it going, Dr. Harvey?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Amazing. So for those who do not know, this is a part 2 episode of the Happy Doc. And as you see directly behind Dr. Castro here, he has his book, Success Reinvention, which is going to be the topic for today. I have to tell you, look, so you were able to send me over a copy, and I took a look at it, and I started to read into your story. And I know I already talked to you, but I have to say I was very moved by your story. And I think, obviously, we're going to get into it. Your mom is your inspiration, and she's done so much for you. But I don't know how much you're willing to share. But would you be able to paint a picture a little bit of that early upbringing for you?
Yeah, for sure. I'll preface, at the beginning, it was really hard to share with others, but I started thinking about the bigger picture. By me sharing, I feel like it's helping, and I'm feeling like maybe I'm turning a negative into a positive. And if I can do that, then why not share? And so, growing up was not easy. And I know for a lot of us, it's not. But my childhood was really rough. My dad was abusive. My mom left my dad at age 16. And the little memories I have of my dad were always abusive. And we grew up in poverty, and a lot of things it's just not knowing. We had this funny looking money, and I always wondered what that was. And later I realized that was food stamps. And then I remember growing up thinking, man, we always have a lot of cheese and milk. I don't know what that's about. And I remember my uncle always bringing groceries. And I'm like, yeah, I'm hungry. I know there's food coming, or I think my uncle's coming tomorrow, so we'll have food. So I just remember growing up in poverty. And then I remember growing up and asking my mom, hey, I need help with XYZ. And her looking at me saying, I can't help you. I would love to help you with this math problem or this, but I can't. I don't know what to say here. And so, but I do remember the strong skills that she gave me and tools to succeed. And that's what this book's about. She gave me a lot of excellent tools that has helped me even till today.
Amazing. And yeah, it's something that is very impressive to me. And, again, I found you inspirational the first time I spoke to you, but to actually read into that story and to learn about, what you had to go through is absolutely amazing. And I feel like oftentimes when people have that difficult upbringing, it can be a reason that they get stuck, right? It can be a reason that they're not able to succeed, not able to reinvent themselves, as your book is about. And yet in your story, you've been able to take those difficulties and transform them into that like net positive. So I think it's a very commendable thing, and you're a great example of what can happen when you do that. So tell me what the inspiration of this book was. Obviously not everyone goes ahead and takes their story and transforms that into the book, but what made you feel like this book was something you wanted to put out into the world?
Yeah, good question. I was thinking about life in general and thinking, I shouldn't be where I'm at. I really feel blessed and honored to be a doctor, and blessed to be able to do what I get to do every day. And then I started thinking, there's a lot of other kids just like me, and there's a lot of single parents out there. And I thought, why not take all these experiences, stuff that's happened to you, and why not refocus that energy and just share that story? And then I started thinking, I was like, I feel like I have the blueprints to succeed. Why not just share it with people that are just like another Harvey out there, another my mom out there? And I thought, if I could do that, then in theory, I'm kind of like a doctor. I'm helping people, I'm helping others, and I'm helping others just like me. And so that's really what gave me the energy. And so it's been a work over the last 5 years of actually writing and sitting down and making time. And then it's a lifetime experience of all the things that have happened to me into that book.
What was it like to literally have that sit down and recall all of this information, data? Was that like a difficult process?
It's interesting you say that. Yes. And it was, and ironically, my mom and I are super tight. We're like best friends. But this book, if anything, has brought us even closer. And she shares stories about my childhood that I didn't even know, or she kind of glanced or touched on it, and I knew, but I didn't realize the depth of it. So this book actually brought out some good and bad memories, but I always think the bad memories are actually good memories, because I think it's causing better good, or there's more good out of it. And so, but yeah, I'll never forget. I had the book came out, and then I had someone basically read the book and create an Audible edition. And then that Audible edition, I had a listen to it, make sure it was well. And I remember having to pause the Audible, because I started crying. I was like, wow, this put me in a bit different place. And it's weird when you write it, but when you hear it, for some reason, it hit me harder. So it was hard.
Yeah.
It was
And
really hard.
and look, I started reading the first like introduction chapter, and I actually had a pause also. You don't know this about my story, but I'm also very close with my mom, and you know, my upbringing wasn't it was great, but there are also a lot of difficulties. And I think that's the one thing that I really like about your book too, is you write it in a story, and you have that sort of story telling kind of a voice throughout of it. And what I think is really nice about that is we all have a story, and you have your story. And then with that story, you know, again, like I was reading and I was connecting it to my story. And I think that's just like something that's really beautiful about and unique about life, is that we all have that. And so I think, again, I think it's something I'm really interested in reading further as I go through the book. And I'm looking forward to really sharing this material with other people. So with that being said, let's dig into a couple of the concepts here. Obviously, my goal is not to, you know, flesh out this whole thing. I want people to check out this book as well. But you kind of start off with this concept, again, of the productivity ladder. And we don't have to go through everything here. Actually, before I get to the productivity ladder, I just reminded myself, some people say that success is something that only talented people can do, right? And some people say that it's something that is kind of born within you. But what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, good. I think success is defined by you. I think that some people will say being wealthy is success. Some people say financial independence is success. For me, my two things that are success are spending time with family, and then the second is helping others, and not in necessarily that order. To me, that defines success. But when I look at all the things I've done, and I'm not bragging in any way, I look back and say, I really shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be a doctor. I shouldn't have started a business. I should have done, I should have made it as far. But I think the key with me, and it goes into the book, is you got to just continuously do better. We all make mistakes. The difference is when we make the mistake, can we do better the next time, or can we learn from our mistakes? And sometimes we have to make the mistakes a couple of times before we learn them well. And then sometimes we just hear about the mistake and don't have to go through ourselves. But I think the key is, a lot of people I've noticed will work at something and then it'll fail. And then they'll say, you know what, this applies to the rest of my life. I can't do X, Y, and Z now because I already failed at this other thing. And I truly think, you know, the older I get, it's more important to learn from your mistakes, make better decisions, and then not to give up. I think the minute you give up, I always tell my kids this and my colleagues, you know, don't you give up. Let someone else reject you, but don't reject yourself. Like, how far are you going to go if you already reject yourself and say, nope, I'm not going to do it? And so I think that's one of the key things I talk about in the book.
Amazing. I mean, I love it. I mean, I love these concepts. I'm getting like super excited just talking to you about it. So yeah, let's dig into some of these success principles and concepts that you've put in the book. So you start off with the productivity ladder. What is that?
You know, this is an interesting story. And I start off the book with a doctor named Dr. Kevin Smith. He was the first person that I consider my mentor towards wanting to be a physician. And I'm going to tell the story. Basically, I was in the U.S. Army. I was drilling that weekend, and by chance, I was half a mile away from where this doctor was going to give a talk about how to get into med school. And during the talk, he talked about something called a productivity ladder. And I thought, what the heck is that? And I remember sticking out because I was the only one in Army fatigues. Everybody else was dressed normal. And I remember he looking at me in the middle of the speech because I came in late because it was during my lunch break. And he talked about an individual that wanted to be a doctor, and all they could dream of was being a doctor. And they went and applied and got rejected. And so this individual went back and got a master's in public health, went back and applied, got rejected, went back and got like a law degree and applied, and then finally got accepted. And I thought, oh my gosh, this person, you know, went 4 or 5 years extra than the normal person just because that's what they wanted to do. But they were just trying to reinvent themselves and always moving forward. And so I've taken that analogy and said, look at life as a ladder, and look at it as an infinity ladder, one that you're always going up to the next rung. And it doesn't matter how fast you get there. It matters that you're getting to the next rung. And then the other part to that, I always say, you know, when you get to the top of the ladder, there's no such thing as the top of the ladder. You want to keep improving, because at that point, you can always, there's always room for improvement. And so this leads me to another story. One of my kids, he was on TikTok. Long story short, he got like 3.5 million hits. And I said, oh my gosh, have some people that might give you some good media tips and help you. And he looked at me and said, Dad, there's no need for that. I could probably teach them. I'm at the max here and there's no room for improvement. And I said, you know what? When you talk like that, I want you to consider that you're actually on the way down, because now you're not learning and other people are going to catch up to you, and you stop learning, and now you're not reinventing yourself. And now you really got to work harder, if anything. And it took him a while to understand, and now he gets it. But my point is, no matter what you're doing, especially us as doctors, we say, oh, we made it, but in reality, we haven't. It's a continual process to always improve.
I love that. And you talked about it in the book as well, but the concept of never arriving, right? Because if we're always in pursuit of learning and growing and all those things, that's where the fun is, right? And to kind of have like that, almost like you mentioned in the previous interview, that childlike sort of mentality. But when you feel like you've reached that peak, like you said, then your ego is super big. You think you're the best. You think that there's no room for improvement, and then there's no way to get a return there. And it's I've been in that state of mind, and I've definitely been humbled in that state of mind many times. I think you and I both could have some examples of getting maybe too hot-headed at some point. But it's really important. So I appreciate that. So with this ladder concept, what are you saying? You're saying that we're able to start to take little steps towards our goal, but it's an infinite ladder?
Yes, because think about us right now and I like this podcast a lot because it's a lot of physicians, and all of us have made the same milestones and have gotten and so-called arrived. And I feel like society also holds physicians at a different level. And so I feel like if you take that MD and say, okay, I am good, I'm the best doctor out there, I've learned it all, then in reality, if you think about it, diseases are changing, evolving, you're learning, there's new terms. They even change the nomenclature, things that you and I label X, and in your field, they change the DSM-4 and they come up with the next terms, and then things change. And so my point is this: if you can always be humble and learning and always improving, then you're really doing a really good job. I worry for those that eventually become, let's just say it, they become arrogant or lose track of the bigger vision. And then all of a sudden they stop learning and they stop improving, and then they just become average. And that's, nothing's wrong with that. But for others, that's not good. For me, I feel like, we only have so many years on this earth. Let's take advantage of it, and let's always continue to improve. And I think that's an important concept to really take into heart. I think that will change your life, your marriage, your situation, your work environment. I really think if you take that kind of attitude, instead of being defensive and saying, oh, no, I don't do that, then no, listen to everyone, all the good and bad feedback, take it all in and learn from it. I think as a doctor, sometimes it's hard because we feel like we've done so many accomplishments and so many accolades that how could you say I'm not doing it right? And in reality, I think if you're humble and you learn and you allow others to teach you, then you can grow even faster.
I couldn't agree more. And it really fits in with your book too. I'm, as a follow-up question to this, do you think it can be harder sometimes for people to reinvent themselves when they're more successful?
Excellent point. I love that you said that. Yes. I think the higher you are, and let's quote unquote say in the food chain, the higher you are in the corporation or wherever it is, it's a little bit easier to say, you know what, I'm here. Why should I kill myself? Why should I push? And so that goes into one of my other chapters is, what is your why? Why are you doing all these things? For me personally, I'm back going to school. I'm getting my MBA because I feel like I need that. I'm more on the business side right now, and I feel like I need these tools. With that said, I've started over 20 companies. I've started different projects. I've done a lot of nonprofits, and I've enjoyed it, but I still feel like I need more. I feel like I'm nowhere near where I should be. I should be further ahead. And so when I'm in class, I'm taking it all in. I'm learning, and it's a lot tougher as I get older to just appreciate, learning and studying. Because back in the day, I didn't have any worries, and now I have other responsibilities, so it's even tougher. And to your point, I think for me personally, when I start training doctors or people that are older, sometimes one of the challenges is they're so used to doing things their own way, and that's the best way in their mind, that it's hard for me to sit down and say, let's pause for a minute, let's work on this together, and let's see if there's a better way. And a lot of times they fight me because they're like, no, my way or the highway. And I'm like, well, let's just slow down a little bit. Let's work on this together, and try to get there. And I think eventually when they see the bigger picture, they start listening more and they start being more receptive. But a lot of it, again, for us physicians, is pride. It's hard as a doctor to say you're wrong or you're not right. And it takes some growing, I think, to be able to say, I'm sorry, or, you know what, I messed up, or I got to do better, or, hey, you have less education than me, but you know what, I bet I'm going to learn from you. And to say those words and to truly mean them, it's hard for some people.
Yeah, definitely. And as you're saying that, it reminds me of the difference between like a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And I feel like when people are really fixed, right, or they feel like they're at the top of the food chain, right, they're very kind of, the mindset's very concrete, and it's very tough to actually, like, not like in a physical sense, but like mentally, to break through and to have a normal conversation. And you can't really even have a conversation when someone at the very get-go, like your son, right, believing they're the best TikToker out there, you can't really even engage with someone who does that. So, and I think this is a nice segue into the next part of your book that you kind of touch on, which is obstacles, right? And there's many obstacles that are going to get in the way of someone being able to succeed. So what's your concept around obstacles, and what are some methods we can break through those obstacles?
Two parts I always think about obstacles. Number one is try your best never to use prior failures or in your mind failures to hold you back for future success. I see that a lot. I meet people and they're like, oh, I failed at this and therefore I cannot succeed. My point with obstacles is two parts. Don't let prior failures move you in the future. If anything, use that information to help you learn from for the future endeavors. And then when it comes to obstacles, I really think it's about two parts. You need to think outside the box, and you really need to plan. All of us, or the majority that we went to med school here, we knew it's going to be a lot of work. We prepared. We knew that it probably couldn't have a full-time job going to med school, and you knew certain things going into, and we all started preparing ahead of time so that we knew that those 4 years were going to be tough, and that we knew certain months were going to be even tougher. And we all prepared, and we looked at those obstacles, and we started thinking outside the box and how can we make things better. And you start seeing, it's interesting watching med students, how they're learning and how they're cramming, and at the coffee line with a book reading because they only have 5 minutes, or right before a patient they're pulling up a book and kind of reading and whatever they could, but they're working out those obstacles. And I think it's important to plan ahead. Basically, you got to look at every possibility of what can throw you off. Obviously we won't know everything, but if you can plan ahead as much as possible, then that's half the battle, because then you know what to do when that issue comes up, because you've been planning for that day.
Absolutely. And leaders anticipate. People who are, really taking charge of their life. And I think that's part of this concept of reinventing yourself and being able to succeed, is anticipating the challenges. And like, for example, med school, as an example, we all know it's hard, but what are you going to do to anticipate the challenges to make it easier? So maybe it goes from hard to like, it was moderate, it wasn't as difficult. So I think it's a really good point. And to sort of plan the obstacles is something, and to think about the obstacles is way better than the avoidance, which I think most people do, which is, I know this is going to be hard. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm not even going to think about it. And then we run into them.
And sorry to interrupt. I want to make sure I say this. Also, think outside the box. Don't just be traditional. That's one of the analogies we did in the last show. Don't think like a child. Take away all the rules, take everything off, and just think of the problem differently. I'll use medical school as an example. One of them was finance for me. So I thought, well, how the heck am I going to afford all these books? I can take out loans. Well, what I did that I thought was out of the box thinking is, I went to the book publishers and I said, hey, I'll correct these books for you for free, but I want the books free. I went to the local bookstore that I bought the books, and I sat down with the manager and said, if you give me all these books free, I will do a book review. I will put a corner in the bookstore that says all my recommendations and why, and I'll go through each subject, and I'll create like a wish list of this is why the best one, the second best, third, and this is what I would have. And guess what? I got all these books for free in med school. And I had probably one of the best libraries in undergrad. I mean, undergrad and mainly med school, because this is what I did. And it was thinking outside the box. I had a problem, which, hey, I don't have money to pay for this stuff. Second is, how do I address that problem? And third was like, you know what? I have an idea. It's kind of crazy, but I'm going to try it. And believe it or not, especially with Lippincott Williams, I got to tell them how to format the book, do great tabs. This was back in the day. And back in the day, I even told them, hey, we need to start going to Palm Pilots or more digital, and forget about printing. We need to start going into the digital media. And they sat me down, and it was nice to be able to tell them where I thought the future of medicine in the digital world and shape that. And that actually gave me all these free apps later when that was coming up. So again, it's thinking outside the box for these obstacles, just not just falling into this one way of thinking.
That's amazing. And as you were saying that, like, I was like, oh, a great idea for a med student, like in modern day 2020, would be figure out how to run a podcast and then do a book review on a podcast. Say, hey, look, if you send me your book, I'll review the book and let students check it out. And then all of a sudden, I think that would be a great idea. So anyone listening,
sounds good.
No, I think it's great. And I think, it's interesting too, because not only did you solve your problem, but in the end, you ended up getting like paid essentially to solve, when you solved that problem, right? You got paid. Yeah. So not only were you not losing money, you're making money from this process, which obviously is an amazing way to do this. Later in your book, in one of the chapters, you start to talk about the idea of celebration. And again, I don't want to really hit every single part of your book, because that's not the point of this. But I do think I want to kind of hit this, because I think one of the things you talked about in there is you can win in terms of success, but you still might feel impoverished or not fulfilled. And this show is all about happiness and fulfillment. So can you talk about why it's so important to celebrate your wins?
Yeah. For the longest, I remember I would do all these things, and, we would accomplish a big task, buy our first ER, start our first company. And I remember just saying, okay, done, and keep going. And I started thinking, I'm like, wow, I don't really ever celebrate. I don't ever do anything. And I remember one time I told my business partner, I was like, we need to celebrate here. And we're like already on the fourth ER. And I said, we started like giving each other high fives, or saying, you know what, starting to take time each time we had a milestone and say, we need to stop for a minute and be grateful that we got this far, and we need to celebrate, And so I started a ritual that whenever a big accolade or something would happen, or even if it was a small accolade, I would, take my kids out to dinner. I would spend time with the loved one, whatever it was, but I would celebrate. And I thought it's important, because there's plenty of negatives out there. There's plenty of things that happen, but are you taking time to just celebrate and rejoice in something that you worked so hard? And I guess I lost track. I think maybe the med student in me and the work kind of forgot why I was doing things. And I thought, you know what? I need to put this in this book. It's important to celebrate. It's important to stop and appreciate what you've done. Even if it's a small one in your mind, it's still important to stop and say, you know what? I'm glad I made it this milestone. Back to chapter 1, it talks about the productivity ladder. So now it's important to celebrate that. It says, you know what? I was working really hard to get to the next rung, and I got there, and I'm going to celebrate.
Yeah. And I think it's so important, especially like for people who have such a strong work ethic and who have sort of gotten used to their work in a sense, that, and I can speak for myself on this. Like, I could definitely look at myself and say, look, I'm kind of like a workaholic. I love doing stuff. I love trying different projects. In medicine, you might do that, right? You've seen 20 patients in a day, but maybe out of those 20 patients, maybe there was like 2 or 3 where you just did such a good job with them. You felt like there was a moment there. But I think we always, and especially like, and I talk about this a lot with fulfillment in medicine, but like, if you don't take like that, 30 seconds or like a minute just to like, oh, I did such a good job there. Like, wow, like this is why I do this. And it kind of comes back to the concept of why, if you just live 30, 40, 50 years of your life working super hard, but you never get those moments, and like, what's the point?
It's true. I personally have taken it to the next level. For me personally, I say each day, live each day as if it's the last. Enjoy every day as much as you can. And I know it's easier to say than to actually do it, but every day, I usually try to always at the end of the day do something for me. It may be simple. It may be calling my kids, telling them I love them. It may be going for a walk. It may be just, as an ER doc, you're always inside, and most doctors are stuck inside. So for me, I love being outside. So for me, maybe just walking around my neighborhood and just kind of enjoying the fresh air. But I just do something that I say, if today's my last day, I can say, you know what, I did what I wanted today, and I had my fun and I enjoyed. I didn't just go and went to bed upset or went to bed with whatever. I'm like, no, I did my job and I enjoyed it and I made the best of today. And if today's my last day, then I did my best already.
Yeah, that's great. One of my guests I had previously, David Meltzer, he says that the most powerful 2 words any human can use is thank you. And he says, if you start your day with thank you and you end your day with thank you, if you do that consistently for a month, it will change your life. I'm curious, do you have you said you go for a walk and those things. Do you have like a consistent gratitude practice, or would you say it's more kind of just taking a moment?
No, I'm very consistent. I feel really humble. I try always to remember where I started, and I thank God every day that I have a roof over my head, that I have food on the table, and I'm just blessed to have those things. And everything extra, I just feel like it's extra, and it's a blessing. So I'm very humble, and when I get up in the morning and I walk around my house, I'm like, wow, I did never expected to have this as a child. I never thought this would be where I'm at. And I just feel grateful that I'm at this place. And that's another thing. I don't want to give away the book either, but there's a part in the book that I talk about. It's important for you not to get stuck on your MD or your titles. It's important to be valued by your name and who you are. My analogy is, at some point, the state of Texas will be like, you're too old, you can't remember stuff, we're taking your license away. And if my name and my pride and everything value is based on that MD, then the minute that goes away, then they take my identity. But if I look at life as this is who I am and this is what I'm worth and this is who I stand for, then you can take my MD away or take everything away, but I'm still who I am. And I think that's a concept that everyone should think about it, especially physicians. That is the MD defining you, or is it you that's defining you?
I mean, I feel like I could sit with that for a while, right? Like that's something to definitely contemplate. And, it's very important because I think as physicians and not just physicians, but any professional, like a lawyer, doesn't matter, whatever accolade or, whatever's behind your name, you're human first, and you're a human who has grown and achieved a title, but that's not who you are. And I think, especially, at least I can speak for the physician space, as let's say something happens and you can't continue doing that job anymore. Who are you after that? And I think that's why it's so important that you've provided this resource and the concept around reinvention, because, as you talk about a lot in this book too, every day is an opportunity. So there's a question that I actually asked as the title of this talk today. And so why do you think today is the best day, or why do you think now is the best time to reinvent yourself? What would you say?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's kind of like when people say, when should I have a kid? I say, there's never a good time to have a kid. You just got to do it. You just got to you got to live life. I'm going to backtrack a little and it'll explain what I'm about to say. A couple of months ago, I met a oncologist, and he said, Harvey, do you have anything on your bucket list? And I said, oh yeah, I got a couple of things on my bucket list, but other things I'm, knocking out now. And he's like, my advice to you is knock them all out now. And I said, why? He said, I'm an oncologist. I met tons of people that I've told them, hey, you have cancer, you're about to die, you got 6 months. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get my bucket list. And basically the reason I say that is now is the time to reinvent yourself. You don't know about tomorrow. Now it's a time to do better. Now is the time to live life and look at life differently. Some of us are scared to move forward about certain things. Well, that's only going to delay things. So in my mind, it's like, don't live life in regrets. Live now. Do it. You're smart. You've studied. You're prepared. Now is the time to look at things differently and reinvent yourself and work on things. We all have room for improvement, all of us. And so the reason I say that with this story is, don't wait. You know, you can always be a better father, a better spouse, a better parent, you know, whatever that is, a better employee. But now is the time to really sit down and not that I'm pushing for my book, but to understand your why and understand why you're doing things, and then take all of that in and make a new you.
Absolutely. I mean, I loved everything you said, and I think it's something that I definitely feel has been an important aspect of me growing personally. And I think anyone listening to that, really today is the day to look at things a little bit differently, try something new, read the new book, go on that trip. Actually, with a caveat, it's COVID time, so maybe not go on that trip. But
What do you mean?
but yeah, I just think it's that's so important. So again, we're alluding to your book a lot, and we'll get to maybe how to check it out shortly. But is there something something that you really would love readers or listeners today to know about this book, or something you hope that they can take away from this conversation that maybe we didn't touch on?
Yeah. I do want to share a quick story. Since the book's been out, it's only been out about a month-ish. I've already had people reach out saying that they read it, they gave it to their kid, gave it to their spouse. I've had excellent feedback. Today, someone told me that they're in a big book club and they picked this book, and his spouse is reading it together. And the husband told the wife today, say, "Hey, I'm taking this to work. I can't put it down. I really want to read the next chapter. I'm not going to wait till tonight." And she was sharing the story with me, and I thought that was kind of funny. But my point is this: my goal of the book, and what I have not said enough, is I just wanted to help someone else. If you read it, donate it to somebody else, give it to someone else. My goal with the book is just to help someone else. I told my publisher this: if one person reaches out to me and says, "Man, this book changed my life. It helped me in X and Y," my job is done. I said, "Wow, my story now helped one other person." And if more people are helped, great. But my goal is just one. And again, if you can donate it to somebody else, give it to your friends, whatever. I would love to hear that story. So if you do anything, or if the book impacts you in any way, I would love to hear that story, and just shoot me an email or contact me on social media.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's already impacted me. I mean, when I read that beginning chapter, and to hear your story, especially because I already interviewed you, and then I didn't really get the full picture, and then to read what you've gone through, and to see you sitting here, an emergency medicine physician, building out businesses, writing a book, doing what you're doing to give back to the community, it's like, wow, amazing, right? So I
Thank you.
definitely, and I mean it, I really do. So if anyone's listening and really wants to just be curious and just take a look, I would love for people to check out your book. So how do they find your book, and what are some avenues people can take a listen or read this book?
Yes, it's on Amazon. So just type in Harvey Castro or Success Reinvention. It's in Spanish already, and it's both in Kindle and paperback. Sometime in October, it should be in the Audible edition, both in Spanish and English. And then I'm working on getting the book next month in Portuguese. And currently, believe it or not, I am working hard on a course that you can log in, and basically that's what I'm doing right now. It'll probably be on harveycastromd.info, and I'm still beta testing and creating it. So I didn't realize how much work is in the ebook, more just creating the course and the content and exploding each chapter into a more in-depth. So that's what I'm doing. I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I'm working on that. So I'm hoping that by January it's done, and then I can have it online. So it should be fun. This is another story I'm doing. The other day I met a waitress, and she was telling me that she has this degree and she's all indebted, and she's been out of school for about, since a year now. And I said, you know what? I'll be right back. Ran into the car, got a copy, signed it, put a little something, gave it to her. I said, please read this book. I think it's going to help. I think you're going to see life a little bit different, and I think you're going to find a job in a different way. And I gave her some ideas and suggestions, and I thought, you know what? This is what it's about. And later, when I have this course, I would love to say, hey, here's a code. It's free. It's yours. I just want you to do something for you, and hopefully I can help you somehow. So that's my goal.
I love that idea. Like, that just got me so excited, because when when you have a conversation with someone, you hit them in one way, but when you can literally physically hand them the book or hand them the course, then they can learn those tools, and
Yeah.
they can figure it out through, like we talked about before,
Yeah.
like they have their own story. So I love that. And again, Dr. Harvey Castro, thank you so much for being on the episode today. I want to celebrate you. So thank you. You did it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to celebrate you for being on this episode today. If anyone has any questions or comments, please let us know. And we'll definitely reach out and reply to all of those. And again, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. Have a great day. Have a blessed day, guys.